What is up? What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first 2023 edition of the A to G Lifestyle Podcast. I've got Andreas in here with me today. Gavin could not make the first of our two episodes today, unfortunately. He had another event planned, but he will be with us on this episode, or I guess the next episode, for our second topic of the evening. Thank you to everybody who's watching this live right now on YouTube. Shout out to anyone who's gone on over to our YouTube channel at A to G Lifestyle TV. Also, thank you to anybody who might be listening to this tape recorded or on demand later, whether that be on our YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else. If you haven't followed us already on our social media, we haven't really been active with it yet. We don't really have many followers, so we'll probably ramp up the activity on those once we have good reason to. But you can go follow us on all social media platforms as per usual at A to G Lifestyle Pod on everything. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. But other than that, welcome.
Don't forget about our Twitch people, Chris.
Oh, the Twitch people, bro. Yeah. How can we forget about the Twitch people? I forgot. See, Andreas was such a kind gentleman that he invested in this streaming service that allows us to broadcast to multiple places at multiple times. And this is an absolutely new experience for me. So shout out to the Twitch people as well. Thank you for watching on Twitch right now. Means a lot. But anyways, Andreas, how we doing, sir?
We're doing great. We're going to talk about something that's very interesting in lots of ways, and I'm excited to get talking about it. I don't really know who this guy is all too much. I've watched a few of his clips, but I'll let Chris introduce the topic, but I am very excited about today's conversation.
No, I can believe it. I can't believe that you really haven't watched or heard much of this fellow that we're about to discuss in detail. Honestly, though, he's been everywhere. You haven't. Well, I guess you're not really on the social medias. To be fair, you can't find this man on any social media effectively besides Twitter. So that wouldn't make sense. All right, never mind. I can believe that. But anywho, we will get right on in to our first topic on episode 2. Obviously, if you've seen the title of the stream, The Mystery of Andrew Tate. So Andrew Tate is a very, very fine young gentleman who calls home, I guess, multiple places across the planet Earth. But in reality, we're not here necessarily to talk about his home life per se. What we are here to talk about is something very, very interesting that happened in the life of Andrew Tate last week-ish, end of 2022. So this is actually last year. This is a last year event. But effectively, in case you haven't heard the news yet, Andrew Tate was arrested at his home in Romania along with his brother Tristan Tate. I think there were 2 other British nationals who were arrested with the 2 Tate brothers as well, under suspicions of human trafficking, rape, and forming an organized crime unit. So very, very fun stuff. I think they were accused of using some fancy technique called this lover boy method. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but apparently the way it works is that there's usually a guy who lures in victims into a consensual relationship prior to exploiting them later on in the relationship. But that's apparently what they've been accused of engaging in. And it's kind of interesting. So the Romanian authorities have seized a decent amount of the Tate's assets, whether it be properties. I think they've seized about 10 of their properties that they have worldwide, in addition to 15 of his supercars, like a whole 15. He owns like 33, I think. So they almost seized half of his car collection. Like, they're going in. They think they have a pretty good case against him. And they've been building this case, I think, since April 2022. At least that's when the investigation by the Romanian police began. They've now been detained as of, I believe, December 30th. For about 30 days. They extended the detention after day 1. So they were detained initially, and then I think the prosecution in the case called for the detainment to be extended to 30 days. So it's now a 30-day detention. They'll be in Romanian jail effectively until the end of January. And it's a pretty interesting situation. I'm interested to see what you have to say about this guy, Andreas. Tell me something I might not know.
So I did some research. I listened to one of my favorite sources of all times, Mr. Robert Barnes, great lawyer, incredible human being, and he was talking about this case being a little bit strange and a little bit different than the way we do law here in the United States. What I heard from Mr. Robert Barnes is that he says in Romania that they're able to do that 30-day hold for questioning for their cases in Romania, which is something that you can't do in the United States. To put somebody on a 30-day hold for interrogation is basically what they're allowed to do in Romania, which is not something that we do here. Very, very strange, but it's just how they practice law there. I did not, in my research, find the charging documents. I found that they were accused of the things that Chris was talking about, but I wasn't able to find any charging documents that I can read. So, with that, I just want to state that what Chris said were the allegations. Unless Chris has the charging documents, I'm not aware they were actually charged in the case. Um, it's very strange. The other thing that was strange is that the initial arrest occurred immediately after the Greta Thunberg and Andrew Tate um, argument that occurred on Twitter, um, which, for certain people may be a thing, thinking that it's the political elites or whatever that have turned on Andrew Tate, because we've seen after the Ghislaine Maxwell trial and the Epstein trial that governments are not very happy or wanting to charge people that are associated in those cases. So it's very strange to see them charge Andrew Tate when we know that Ghislaine Maxwell had a client list and there's nothing come from that. So it seems strange. So certain people on the right are thinking, well, maybe this is just because he's not a favored person status, like the Epstein side appears to be. So that's all very strange, and it feels weird is what I want to say about that the timing of everything. But if it's legitimate, then it's completely legitimate. I heard about these allegations originally before I did my research here, when I was listening to Brittany Venti talk, um, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. She was talking about um, uh, Andrew Tate's association with some sort of Romanian gang or something on that sort. I don't quite remember because I didn't know about his existence really. I knew that he got deplatformed from the internet several months ago. That came across my news, but um, I did not see anything um, in between then. So I don't quite look him up. I didn't do any research, and the most recent thing was that Brittany Venti discussion. So that's that's what it is. So that's what I know initially. To discuss his deplatforming that occurred a few months ago, I was listening to a gentleman by the name of Good Logic when that occurred, and they were discussing how Andrew Tate, I think it was like 4 months ago, got removed from all social media on a single night,
Hmm.
which is strange. We saw more recently now with the Twitter files that they are communicating amongst themselves, and we saw the similar occurrence occur with Alex Jones. I think a few years back, where he got removed from all social media at the exact same time. So he Andrew Tate's not a favored political class here with our big tech. So that's what I knew about him. Chris, do you want to give more background, since apparently you knew about him in a deeper way than I did, because I just peripherally found out about this gentleman.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's good stuff though. And also, I apologize if I sounded a little bit quiet there maybe. Uh I think my audio was coming through another camera, but I should sound a little bit clearer now. So hopefully everything sounds better. Anyway, it's interesting. The fact that you brought up Greta, that whole story is kind of interesting because there are a lot of people who say that that's the way that the Romanian authorities found out that he was in the country and available for them to arrest. Is apparently the whole situation with Greta and the Twitter string and the pizza box. It's kind of funny. If you haven't heard about what happened with that, and maybe you're not following very closely with Andrew Tate or follow anyone on Twitter or are on Twitter frequently, and if you aren't, I can't blame you. But effectively, Andrew was unbanned on Twitter, I think, I want to say early December. And in early December, or I guess rather late December, like I think the day before he was arrested, he got in a little Twitter spat with Greta Thunberg, the climate activist from I think I don't remember what country from Europe she's from, but she's widely known as a climate activist. You've probably heard of her before. She's like 19, and he decides to pick a fight with her. He picks a fight with her over one of the stupidest things you possibly could. You know she's a climate activist, so of course what he posts on his Twitter feed is him filling up his Bugatti Chiron, like a super expensive $6 million something car. And like in the text, he says something along the lines of, I'm contributing to, he effectively brags about his carbon emissions. And it's hilarious because Greta, or rather he ends up asking Greta if she would like him to send her info about his carbon emissions. So he says something like, drop your email in the thread or something like that. And Greta ends up responding. She's like, ooh, like something like, oh, that's intriguing. You can send me an info or an email with the info of your carbon emissions at Big D Energy, if you know what I'm talking about, at I think getalife.com. So yeah, Twitter Twitter thought that was absolutely hilarious because Twitter loves anything that has to do with bullying Andrew Tate. But after Greta made Andrew look very foolish in this manner, Andrew decided effectively that he was going to post a little response video. And that's not something that's uncommon for him to do per se, but it was just funny because in the video, he opted to demonstrate how little he cares for the environment by posting a video of him getting like pizza boxes from someone else. And he puts the pizza boxes on the table and he says something on the lines of, yeah, we're going to make sure we don't recycle these like at all. And I don't remember what he said in the rest of the video, but from the pizza box, they could tell that the chain where he ordered the pizza from was Romanian. It's absolutely hilarious. But the whole situation as a whole, it's very interesting. Andrew Tate kind of came into the popular spotlight. Personally, I should probably start personally, right? That would probably make sense. Personally, I came across Andrew Tate maybe early April, May-ish, around that time of the year. And it was very interesting. He was a very interesting guy. He was very provocative. And honestly, I came across him first on TikTok. And the first few videos I saw of the guy were some of the videos he said about vaping. And honestly, I heard that and I was like, yeah, I can agree with him on this issue. On this issue, he seems very annoying, but I can't agree with him on this issue. So if people are seeing this in mass and these videos are getting like thousands of views, I agree. Vaping is absolutely stupid. Makes no sense. Little jewel stick that you like blow fake air out of. I don't even know. It's just stupid. Like water vapor, nicotine. So I saw that and I was like, okay, this guy's interesting. He might have some points that I agree with, but I never really thought much about it beyond that. And then I started to see that he was trending everywhere. And I was like, okay, what does this guy have to say? Why do people find this British American sounding goofball interesting? And then I kind of got into his background a little bit and I started to understand why. So effectively, I don't know how much you know, Andreas, about his personal life or the way he grew up, but effectively he grew up in a household. He had 2 siblings, obviously his brother Tristan. He has a sister, I believe. They don't really contact each other very much. As far as I'm aware, he seems to think that she's on the more, I guess, how do I put it, liberal side of the spectrum. So she's more for the culture change. And obviously Andrew considers himself a more traditional type of dude. So they don't really talk a whole ton. He grew up in a household where his dad, I believe, served in like the army or the military of some sort. So he was gone quite a lot. If it wasn't for that, his job, it was competing in chess tournaments. He was a really high level chess player. He was like grandmaster level chess player. His dad was. So effectively, he wasn't really around a whole lot. But apparently when he was around a lot, he taught Andrew and Tristan a lot of important life lessons, to the point where they ended up taking those. And since they grew up in some of the worst parts of the world at that time, I think they grew up in places like Gary, Indiana, when it was the murder capital of the world. They grew up in Detroit, Washington, D.C., Luton, England, which was like the murder capital of the UK at the time. So they were poor. They were poor. So like he talks about them going to like Chick-fil-A or like KFC and literally eating stuff out of the dumpster after they've thrown out all the leftovers. And it's actually kind of funny because he says nowadays one of the reasons every time, sorry, loud sound. Anyway, that was my phone dropping. But anyway, he says one of the things that they do when they're celebrating something in life is they go to KFC. And when they go to KFC, they actually just order like tons and tons of actual chicken because they never got to eat it as a kid. They had to eat the leftovers. So effectively, this struggle took them from their early strugglesome, poor, low socioeconomic level of life throughout their
their early life and into their teenage years and early adulthood, and they got into kickboxing, I guess. So they became professional kickboxers. Andrew was obviously more successful than Tristan in that regard. Andrew, I think, became like a 4-time worldwide kickboxing world champion. So, so they built their name initially off of kickboxing. But like he says, kickboxing doesn't really pay. And Andrew always wanted to find a way to be successful. That's something that struck him significantly, even as a kid. He says he'd be walking down the street with maybe some buddies, and they'd see this like Ferrari or Lamborghini just pull by them on the side of the road, or on the actual road. They'd be walking on the side. But anyways, they'd see a Ferrari drive down the street, and they'd be like, that's a pretty cool car. And Andrew was like, yeah, that is a pretty cool car. Why does he have that and I don't? So it was that fundamental question, or the way that he questioned things like that in life, that made him reevaluate how he wanted to live life. Because he was very bothered that his friends didn't ask that follow-up question. They would just stick at, man, that's a cool car, and just move on with life. Because, I mean, if you're lower socioeconomically, that doesn't really seem like a reality for you, right? So Andrew was bothered by things that most people weren't bothered by, and he decided later on in life that he would do pretty much whatever it takes to get rich and to be able to live the life he wanted to live. Obviously, the way he ended up doing that isn't really, really what we would call in society in general a very ethically sound way of making an income. What he did is he used his kickboxing name and his reputation as a 4-time worldwide kickboxing champion, I guess I'll say it that way. And he used that to obviously attract a lot of women, because when you're popular like that, I guess the ladies come calling. And what he did is he offered all the ladies he knew the opportunity to join him, because he was starting this webcam business, obviously. And obviously a lot of them rejected, because they're like, yo, bro, you got to be serious. You cannot be serious, actually, rather. Like, what the heck are you doing? But he ended up finding 4 women who are actually able or willing to engage with him in that business. And what they ended up doing is they ended up building a little webcam business, and that ended up turning into, I guess, a multi-million-dollar business that he ran. So obviously not the most ethical dude, but he ended up doing what he wanted to do, which was make money. So Andrew Tate has demonstrated over the course of his life that he's a guy who will do pretty much whatever it takes to get money so he can live the life he wants to live. And now obviously he's super rich. I think he now owns a few casinos that contribute to his income as well. But I think he still keeps the cam business operational to some extent, if I'm not mistaken. But he obviously has a bigger influence now. And one of the things that he's claimed, at least up to this point before his arrest, is that everything he's done consensually, right? So it's kind of a surprise that he'd be getting arrested for something that he's claimed multiple times he's got no involvement in. But at the same time, he does have an interesting past. I believe in 2015, he was actually arrested in the UK when he was participating in, there was a TV show. I don't remember what it's called, but he was a part of this reality TV show in the UK at the time. And he actually ended up getting arrested back in 2015 on suspicion of rape. Although those charges never did go through. So he was able to move on from that. I think a few years ago, he was also, again, detained briefly on suspicion of rape or sexual assault, something like that, I guess. When some lady who showed up to a party they were having at their house in Romania accused him of like forcing her to do things. She texted her boyfriend about it. She was all super upset. And the Romanian authorities busted into their house, I guess. They detained him and Tristan, I guess, for the evening, and they let them go the next day because they ran back the video footage like Andrew and Tristan told them to. And they're like, yeah, I don't know what she's talking about. Like, you know what she's talking about? Like,
Chris.
no idea. No idea.
Hey, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Does this have anything to do with the Big Brother that Rare up in the chat is bringing up? The Big Brother incident when he got kicked off the show?
The Big Brother, it might be. I think that's probably the show. That might be the show. I think that's what we're talking about. Yeah, that was a reality TV show. Okay, perfect. There you go. It was Big Brother.
Thank you, Rare Cup. Yep.
Yeah, thank you for that. That helps a lot.
We'll try to keep interacting with the chat as best we can. So if you know something that we don't, just let us know, and we'll add it to the discussion because what we really want the show to be is a discussion about what's going on with multiple perspectives and views. So thank you for your input there, Rare Cup.
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Thank you. This is supposed to be an interactive thing. So if you do have something that you want us to discuss or you want our opinion on, feel free to drop it in the chat. Also, let us know if anything sounds weird or funky too. So we'll
Yeah.
get to fixing that if that's the case. But yeah, so that was the show he was in the UK for, Big Brother. That was when the initial rape charge was had. So bottom line is he's been accused of engaging in activity like this in the past, but each time it's been kind of resolved relatively quickly. This is the first time officially I think I've seen in his brief rise to fame. Like he rose to fame like that, like overnight.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've seen him actually get detained, and it actually kind of looks serious because I've watched a decent amount of his content. He used to do live streams very frequently on his YouTube and then on his Rumble before this whole incident arose. And one of the things that he and Tristan were adamant about when people would accuse them of, oh, they're sex traffickers, they're doing all this illegal stuff behind the scenes, they would animately call it out. They would get frustrated. They would get heated on stream. They were like, I cannot believe people think we're criminals. We are not criminals. We are not criminals. Like that type of thing. So I guess we're going to have to hope this is not true. Otherwise, they're not going to look very good, in my opinion. You can't be animately calling yourself not a sex trafficker and then end up getting evicted of sex trafficking. Like, it just makes sense. But that's effectively a background summary on Andrew Tate. Is there anything else that you didn't know about Andrew that I can maybe answer about?
Well, it seems that Rare Cup here is making a documentary on the whole situation. So that's very interesting. I look forward to seeing that. If you wouldn't mind sending that to our Gmail when that's done. I think Chris is going to add it here to the description of the video. That would be really awesome, and we can view that and discuss that as soon as you've got that out. That'd be real awesome. I'm very interested because I think this is going to develop very interestingly as time goes on. Right. They've got Andrew Tate right now in the 30-day hold with the Romanians, right? So we'll see what happens once that's done, and as more information comes out, the better. I was listening to Tim Pool's show, what is it, Timcast IRL last night, with the survivor advocate lady, and she read out some of the statements of the victims. You can flip that around, I guess, Chris. I believe in you. You just drag it on the screen.
Oh, there we go. Look at this. Absolute StreamYard pro right here. You can tell.
Yep. So I read that, and no, I didn't read that. I watched that, and that was very interesting. I listened to those statements. Personally, after the whole Johnny Depp incident, I'm a little bit more hesitant sometimes to immediately believe victim stories and statements, but I want to see what happens with the trial and what happens after these 30 days and appeal and all those things, because if he really did do what they're accusing him of doing, he really needs to be locked up and thrown away with the key. That's just not something that you just do. It's not okay. It's not good. But did you happen to watch the Tim Pool segment yesterday with the survivor advocate who read off the statements from Andrew Tate, Chris?
I actually have not. I don't watch a lot of Tim Pool. I've heard of him. Like I've heard of his content. I know a few people like you who do watch him, but I did not. No, I did not. Was it good? It sounds like it was good.
It was good. Tim was a little bit aggressive with the survivor advocate when she wasn't willing to disclose any additional information during the discussion because, well, she wasn't allowed to. She wasn't allowed to give names. She wasn't allowed to say if the evidence was significant and in her mind was good. She did say that she believes all survivors. So that's her view and her slant. But I'm very curious about any sort of reports or documents that come out of this, so that I can read it, because I really like to read what's written before I make significant judgments. I think that's important, at least personally to me, to not assume somebody's evil or not evil until I've had a chance to review the evidence on my own. And that's just me. I know some people are more or less not that way, but that's really my big takeaway for me personally is that I've been doing that recently, and that's that. Um, what are you saying here, Rick? I think the Tate part of the podcast didn't really teach us anything new. The rest of the podcast is really good and needs to be discussed more. Yeah, the the part of the podcast, I agree with you. I agree with you, Rick. The part of the podcast that discussed Andrew Tate was really short, and yeah, and I agree. It didn't tell us anything new. I want to see some documents. Is what I really want to see. Um, so, Chris,
Mm.
what do you think? Let's go back in time here. What do you think about the first thing here is with censorship, right? Regardless of what you think Andrew Tate says, if you agree with him or well, actually, Rick Up wanted us to get into what our opinions were of being pro or anti Andrew Tate. Do you want to just quickly give your opinion on Andrew Tate just in general before we continue this discussion? I'll give mine.
Of course, the age-old question. The age-old question. What do you think of Andrew Tate? Am I pro Andrew Tate or anti Andrew Tate? I will put it this way. When I listened to him for maybe the first few months, I was more pro Andrew Tate than I was anti Andrew Tate, simply for the fact that I feel like everyone has their own opinions in life. And I don't really feel like he was saying anything overtly harmful towards anybody else. Obviously, he has his own opinions. And a lot of them do tend to talk about and discuss concepts that are very, very anti-specific groups of people. Like I know, obviously, for one, many people will call him like a misogynist and such. But I mean, personally, from my perspective, he likes to claim that he's a religious person. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he said recently that he's going to convert to Islam. I might be wrong about that, but I feel like I did hear that. He doesn't understand the role of religion in life. He seems to think religion is just another thing you throw on top of the whole pile he has. Okay, Rare Cup does say in our comment section that he has converted. So he is now officially, I guess, working towards becoming a practicing Muslim. Beforehand, it seems like he approached the issue of religion from the perspective of it's just another thing that I have to throw into my life, or that is good to throw into my life. If I'm not mistaken, I believe one of the few times he discussed religion, he said something along the lines of, even if it's not true, even if God doesn't exist, the fact that many people do believe he exists makes him real in a sense. So you can see that his approach to religion and God and God's sovereignty over reality is kind of messed up. And what he does is he takes that perspective and he applies it to different religious doctrines. So what he did actually is he'd point out the sections in the Bible that mention like men having multiple wives. And he'd use that as justification for God being on board with people, men, obviously, having multiple wives. And it just shows how little he understands the context that he's reading in the Bible there. Because when you read the Bible and you find the people who have multiple wives, King Solomon probably namely among the bunch, who had like 700 wives and like 300 concubines, that's not something the Bible's condoning. That's not something
you
God's
want to
condoning.
talk about that for just a second. You know,
Sure.
in the Old Testament, right, you see that there's multiple incidences with multiple wives. And at least in my study of the Old Testament, you know, it appears that every single time it comes up, it always is preceding a problem, right? You know,
Mhm.
people taking multiple wives, and then all of a sudden there's some issue that occurs. So I don't know. A lot of people will say that the Old Testament condones taking multiple wives. I don't think I'm there, because it seems like, you know, it's almost like we're going to report the history of what happened here in the Old Testament regarding multiple wives, and then in that reporting they show that it just kind of fails, right? Um, Rare Cup says he became religious because of the amount of evil he's seen in the world and has concluded there is always equal and opposite force, and the only thing he could come up with is that God must exist. Interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Actually, I can touch on that briefly if you want me to.
Sure.
The idea that is actually a very correct idea. The fact that there is evil in the world demonstrates that there has to be a creator, an all-powerful God, because you can't have evil without good, and you can't have good unless there's God. You can have the sun without the shadows, but you can't have the shadows without the sunshine. So the fact that he has observed that there is a lot of evil in the world, and that has drawn him to the idea that there is a God, is very correct rationale. Unfortunately, again, his approach to God is a very boxy view. He's boxed God into this sort of like, okay, super powerful being, but not sovereign. So in a sense, he sees God as a being that only has dominion over the universe because he, in a sense, is confined by it, is almost kind of the impression I get from listening to him talk about religion, which is very, very messed up. If God does exist, he exists external to the universe he created. He's not confined by it. So the fact that he has come to believe that there is a God is good, but I still am not convinced yet that he understands the concept of God, because even like you were saying, Andreas, you can read the Old Testament and maybe not say that God is not anti rather having multiple wives, but then you see in the end, every time someone has multiple wives and concubines, things just go badly. Like God's judgment is brought on that nation. So I think the fact that he takes those
Well, it's
little
it's
bits
not
and
the
pieces.
nation, it's the person, right? Solomon has the 700 wives, and the kingdom gets taken out from his children. I believe it was before the flood. It was a discussion about a man taking multiple wives, and that wasn't good. I think he killed somebody in order to get the wife. I'd have to look it up and read it again. And then you've got the flood that occurs, and then you've got, you know, David and Bathsheba, right? And that's not good. And if I'm not mistaken, David was married at the time that he took Bathsheba, right? And she wasn't married. Well, she was married
No,
to
she was married. Yes.
somebody else, yeah, at the same time. So this multiple wives thing has been it appears to be proven out throughout the Old Testament that even though people were doing it, it wasn't good. Oh, and then what's his name? Jacob, right? He had multiple wives too, and that didn't turn out well either, right? He married Leah, and then he married Rachel, and they had their little feud and conflict, right, about children, and that ultimately led to Joseph, right, and that conflict, right, because of this multiple wives issue. So, as I was saying before, I don't know, I think it talks about multiple wives in the Old Testament, but I don't think it's necessarily condoning multiple wives, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's not condoning outright. Excuse me. It's not condoning outright, but obviously we do see God does bring judgment of a sort on the people who are engaged in it, right?
which is natural consequences too, right? So, maybe God didn't give judgment right on Jacob for marrying both Rachel and Leah. I think her name's Leah, right? I'm pretty sure it is.
Leah, yeah.
But you saw the conflict that occurred because of it, right? He gave favoritism to the child of his favorite wife, and that caused the whole fight with Reuben and Simon and all of the other children because of that conflict, you know. So there's that.
Yeah, effectively. Rare Cup does make another good point here. He thinks that his interpretation does have a selfish reasoning behind it, so he can just justify himself having multiple wives, multiple women. I think that's definitely true. But that does go into, as I tie out kind of the point I was making about Andrew and his points, and why I'm kind of pro Andrew, even though overall I'm not necessarily, but I'm pro the fact that he is not scared to say what he believes about stuff. Let me put it that way. I do think overall his warped view of God and God's power and sovereignty does change the way he reads religious texts, and that in turn changes the way he looks at women and approaches women. He sees women as just another object. Fun fact, y'all, women are not Pokemon. You don't have to worry about catching them all. Pick one. There are millions, billions of women out there. Pick one.
Unless you're King Solomon and you need 700.
Yeah, you don't need that. Actually, let's just talk about Solomon for a second, because I've always just been perplexed by the logic or the logistics behind Solomon's situation. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That is 1,000.
Is it that way or is it the other way? Is it 300 wives and 700 concubines, or is it 700 wives and?
Let's look it up. That might be right. How many wives did Solomon have? 700 wives. Let's go. I know my
Okay.
Bible. Let's go. Sweet.
Good job. Good job, Chris.
Yes, let's go. All those
Yes.
years of Bible class in like middle school and elementary school weren't for nothing. But
Yep.
Effectively, yeah, it goes to show just the logistics behind Solomon. 1,000 women. There are 365 days in a year. If he hung out with one woman every single day, he would not have time to hang with that woman for another over 3 years, almost 3 years actually, because 3 years would probably be like 1,090 something days, I think. But point is, dude, the logistics. Imagine you go to have dinner with one of your women. You're like, all right, this was super fun. I'll see you in another 3 years. So like, just imagine. That's hilarious.
Yeah. But I don't know, just thinking old times, right? Just because pontificating is fun. I don't know if all of them were really quote unquote wives, other than just like political agreements between nations, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's all those tribes and things that were around during that time, and alliances for families was often done through marriage. So I don't know, if he even cared about the vast majority of those wives.
Yeah. All right. That is fair. That is a point you can make, because that was something they did do a lot back then, right? Because there was a lot of political tension in that region. So the deal would be you would marry the daughter of a nearby king, and in turn he would agree not to attack you, obviously, because you have his daughter in your kingdom. But to just tie it back around to Andrew Tate really quickly, that warped view of God, warped view of women, or reading religious texts, and then the warped view of women is kind of why he approaches topics like women in the way he does and comes off as misogynistic. I don't think it's very apparent he doesn't hate women. Like even the women that he had, like who lived with him for long periods of time, will say that he's not a bad dude. He treats them very respectfully, I guess. Like again, the terms are subjective here because we're talking about a dude who does whatever he wants. So effectively, the relationships that he's engaged in that have been consensual that we know of to this point, it seems like none of the women really have anything bad to say about him, even after they break up with him. But the point is, the stuff he does say is very provocateur, especially in a context, in a world, in a society in general, where it's bad to say things that upset people. It's bad to offend people. So he says all the stuff he says, knowing that people don't like it, but he says it because he feels he has to say it. I think Rare Cup said something else in the comments.
Yeah, she did.
Here. Let's see.
Let's see. I don't know what you are, Rare Cup. Your name leaves that ambiguous.
He is a Rare Cup. That's what we know. That's what we know.
Is it a he or is it a she? Rare Cup.
Oh, Rare Cup. Rare Cup. You got to answer this critical question.
That's a man. Okay.
Good. You got the big question out of the way now. Fantastic.
Yep. Okay.
What does he say? I do agree with Andrew when he says if any man is truly honest, would they want to have sex with another woman if their partner's fine with it and there'd be no issues, then the answer would be yet. You want to take that one?
Yes. No, it'd be yes. The answer would be yes, okay. Right? Because Rare Cup corrects it in the next sentence.
Yeah, you're right. Well, look.
Okay.
Perfect. What do you think about this, Andreas?
I don't know. That depends on the person. I think. I don't think it's every man, right? Because some people, are not wired that way, right? Where they don't have interest in somebody that's not their spouse, right? And then compare that to some other men who it is an interest, right? So I don't know if that's a true generality that you can apply to all people, but I would agree that it would probably be a lot of people, a significant amount, would be that way. But I don't think you could say all. I don't think you can. I don't think you can say all for most things, unless it's a human nature issue, right? And if you think that's natural human nature, it might be, but I don't know the details on that in general. So what do you think, Chris, here? Do you think it's true that men would want to have sex with other women if their partner was fine with it without an issue?
I mean, the argument that we'd be talking about specifically here as it pertains to Andrew Tate is the fact that he does say that that's a guy's natural desire, is to just have sex with as many women as possible, right?
Yeah.
Personally,
but once you've paired off, does that remain true? Right? Because some people, right, it becomes a hassle to have more women, or at least what they've said, and they don't want to deal with that, right? Because it's just annoying and irritating. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
that is fair. Rare Cup also does reply by saying that we're
It's
biologically
not,
wired that way. Uh, I think the thing
but
is that you can you're wired in a way that is manipulative, or it's manipulable rather. Like it can be changed. Like your default wiring isn't something that you have zero control over. So self-control and seeking the appropriate sources, in our opinion as Christians, that would be God, it will change the way you approach life. So by default, you will not approach women as just Pokemon, as objects, things to collect, things to
right,
have sex with. You will see them as people made in the image of God, who are of another gender, who has been given the God-given ability to be man's supporter in relationship one-on-one. So from the perspective of, I think men are naturally wired that way. I think society naturally wires men that way. So over time, they just come to the conclusion that, yeah, that would make sense. I should pursue that. But otherwise, I think if society was promoting more religious type of
I don't
content, that
I
might
don't
not be
know.
the case.
I don't know here. So let me argue Rare Cup on Rare Cup's side. Um, I don't know if humans are naturally wired that way 100% of the time, right? Because if we look at the animal kingdom in a biological sense, there are animals that are monogamous only. And so I don't know, and that's a natural trait of that species. I think it's penguins, I think it's other sorts of birds and several animals that are naturally monogamous, because that was advantageous for them, right, biologically. So I don't know if naturally all humans, right? My point is I agree with you in the vast majority of cases. But I just always want to think, do we know enough to think that that's true in all cases? But you're most likely. I agree with you in the vast majority, but I disagree because I don't ever like to say all. That's just something that
Yeah.
I don't like to say. But yes, and I agree with your agreement, Rare Cup, in saying that we'd still be in the dark ages killing each other if we didn't solve this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. That would not be a good sight to see at all. But ultimately, am I pro Andrew Tate or anti Andrew Tate? I think I'm pro Andrew Tate being allowed to say what he is allowed to say, or wants to say rather. And I think at that point, he's never really called for violence against anybody. So he might come off very aggressive, but he's never really called for anybody to be killed or put in prison, except for the people obviously who silence him, because he says that's not a good thing. Um, but even then, he doesn't call for them to be murdered or harmed. He just calls for them to allow for free speech to happen. So I think ultimately, I'm pro Andrew Tate being allowed to say what he wants, because he hasn't said anything that is necessarily worthy of him being banned. I mean, there are lots of people on
Well,
social media who have said or promote ideas that the world generally thinks of as not very productive, who still have ability to communicate in the public discourse on social media. People
well, I
like,
might
oh, go for it. Go for it.
go.
Go. I was just going to say people like, I guess, Islamic leaders, for instance. Like a lot of people don't usually see their doctrine as something that should be discussed in the public sphere, like, because it's very, very conservative and very traditional. But nonetheless, you don't really see many Islamic teachers banned on Twitter. Like their accounts are still active. That was the point I was going to make.
Well, so you know, I slightly disagree with Chris here. Chris kind of implied or inferred that there was content that is bannable. I disagree. I think that darkness makes radical ideas more extreme. So by removing somebody from public discourse, right, the public can't see what that discourse is. And therefore that discourse that's left in the dark is going to fester and grow rather than be discussed and argued against, right? Because if let's say that you've got some reprehensible opinion, right, and you get kicked off of all of the internet for that opinion, you'll find people that agree with that opinion, and you'll all sit there together and not have any way, right, where somebody with a differing opinion can discuss that. And so that's where I disagree with Chris. Is I don't think any objectionable content should be bannable, right? The internet has become the public square, right? YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, they're all the square. And I don't think that content should be removed, right? You should be able to discuss almost anything, right? So that the public can see what you're discussing and refute your arguments if they need refuted, or be enlightened by arguments that certain people don't want you to see, right? If it is a true argument. So
When it comes to content being banned or not banned, I think I'm all pro anybody getting their ideas out to the world. I was thinking more so from the perspective of content. Like the idea that someone would post like a very graphic video or image online on social media. And there are lots of kids nowadays, especially like in the age of middle school, like 11, 12, 13, who have social media, who might be exposed to like graphic content like that. So in that case, I'd be all for community guidelines saying, hey, this is not okay. This is a little bit extreme. We don't want this type of content here. But as it pertains to people getting their ideas out, I don't really feel the need to ban anyone from social discourse. I don't think that makes sense.
Well, this is getting a little bit off topic, but for example, there was that video of that Australian knife fight, right, which got Nick Rekieta banned for a week off of YouTube, where if you didn't see how fast that fight was, and you didn't see the gore or whatever it was, you wouldn't really understand that you shouldn't be in a fight, right? He was talking about in that video, in that discussion, right, that this thing is so quick, and that the pride of young men is what's getting them killed, right? And that guy was dead before he even hit the ground, right? He was dead and he didn't even know. He's still standing when he died. And by removing that content, even though it was graphic and gory, you're removing a portion of discussion that could occur. And that's my opinion on it, right? So let's say, for example, that there's something truly horrendous happening in some other part of the world, right? And it gets banned, right, because of graphic content, right? You can't talk about what's happening there, right? A good example would be George Floyd. There wouldn't be as big of a discussion about police if the video was removed from the internet, right? You wouldn't have both sides discussing about what really should be done about the event that occurred if you couldn't watch or see the George Floyd video, right? And that's why I'm hesitant to remove anything from the internet in a censorship way if it's not illegal in itself. So like CP should be banned and removed, because that's not good on its face. But anything else, right? You put it behind some sort of not safe for work filter, but it should be there and should be discussed.
Okay, I can see that. I can see that side of the issue, I guess. I wouldn't disagree with you on that. I can see why. I just think personally that it's not. I can understand. Let me put it this way: I can understand why social media has put in place guidelines to prevent that sort of thing. I'm just anti their abuse of their own guidelines, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Speaking of which, Rare Cup did post this. He said, "I'm surprised you were more pro Tate at the beginning, as I was on the complete opposite. And I actually hated him until I dived into his long form content and understood the context." Yeah, that's another thing. This is another thing that Andrew does say. This is another one of the things I agree with him on. People will just take anything out of context these days. Heck, even Christians take the Bible out of context very frequently. People take things out of context because either they're ignorant and they don't understand that they're taking it out of context, or they're intentionally trying to take it out of context, right? I think when it comes to Andrew Tate, a lot of people on the front end, so the people who would post clips of his long form content to places like TikTok or Instagram Reels, weren't posting it in order to make him seem like a bad dude, but they didn't understand that the parts of his content that they did post were actually very easy for people who hated him, which is a solid majority of people, to take out of context and use as weaponry against him. So I can definitely understand that. But definitely look into his long form content before judging him. Obviously, we've had a decent, 7-8 months of him being in the spotlight. So I'd assume like most people already have taken a look at least some of his long form content. But that's definitely a fair judgment. You can't make a judgment about somebody just because you heard one little clip outside of context. Make sure you understand the whole context. before you actually get to judging people. And then to Rare Cup's second comment saying, I agree, by banning one side of an argument, you are turning the internet into nothing more than the current mainstream media. Exactly right. Hit it on the head. You cannot ban people simply because you disagree with them. Like, that's no productive society has lasted when one side has gotten completely shut out or silenced. It just ends up in revolution most of the time, either literally or I guess now in the digital age of the world, digitally. Right. So there's really no saving grace to this. But I'm going to transition us here. What do we think we can learn about this? Obviously, we've talked a lot about sort of the underlying principles that have gone into who Tate is and what has made him who he is. What do we think we can learn from this personally? What can we take from Tate's experience, his way of looking at life, his very aggressive sort of demeanor, and how can we apply that in our own life, I guess, either protectionary or like actually acting on principles of sort.
Well, first thing, we're not Andrew Tate, right? Neither of us are, and whoever's listening is probably not. Um, so, I think the big thing here is that, regardless, I think as somebody said it, so I'm quoting them and I don't know who to attribute it to, but whatever Andrew Tate did or didn't do, what he said before is as true or as untrue as it was before he was charged or brought in or did that action. So that's one thing that we can realize is that, whatever he said, if you agree with him, if you disagree with him, right, his ideas are still his ideas regardless of his actions. And I think that's something that we should take into account. And I also think that, I don't agree, as discussed before, that removing discourse is good. And I think that regardless of what somebody says, if I agree with him or if I don't agree with him, I haven't really listened to him. I think I said that at the beginning of the thing. I listened to some. I listened to so I haven't listened to him as much as I should to truly discuss his ideas. But some of his problems that he identifies, as Matt Walsh said, and I listened to that discussion on him, are some of the problems he identified are legitimate problems, but some of his solutions aren't legitimate solutions. But you wouldn't be able to have that discussion if you couldn't hear what his ideas were. And yes, he is a marketing genius. He quickly became prominent. And I think it was like a month from February is when he started. He went from nothing to being huge.
That's
So
incredible.
yes, Rare Cup. He was brought in. It was good. Um, and so yeah, that's my thoughts. Um, I disagree with a lot of his solutions as Smash Waltz does, but he should be able to have those ideas spoken. And I don't want to comment on his legal case because I haven't read anything yet that allows me to make my own opinion about his guilt. Chris?
Mm-hmm. No, that's very true. As far as I'm aware, he is in what they're calling pre-trial detainment of 30 days. So there is a trial scheduled, or I guess if is that what that means? Do you know what that means? Would that
I
mean
don't
that
think it's a pretrial detainment. I think it's a pretrial. What do you call it? Pretrial. It's a questioning phase that they have in Romania that they don't have here. We don't. No ill explanation. I don't know what you're saying, Rick. Up. If you want to give us some more context, we can discuss it.
he said?
But
I'll explain, I think.
no, I'll explain.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, he's in a 30-day. Well, I guess a 30-day questioning hold is what Robert Barnes was talking about. I don't know if he's still in that or if he's in a different 30-day hold. So that's something that they can do in Romania that we can't do here. We can't hold a witness or a potential criminal in the United States for 30 days without charging them in order to get questions out of them. We can't do that. So that's what I believe he's in. Rare Cup might change my opinion if he's got some information I don't have.
Mhm.
But that's that. Rare
No,
Cup, it's been good. I enjoy discussing with you.
no, yeah, I agree. That's what I was about to say. I was about to say, if you guys want to hop in the chat and hop in on our discussion, feel free to do so. We have a few people in here. If you guys want to hop in and get our opinion on something, whether that be the topic that we're discussing or maybe even another topic that's relatively similar or related, go right ahead, drop it in the comment section. We will highlight it. We will discuss it. But as for Tate, yeah, I think before we make an official judgment on his character, obviously the fact that he's been involved in several related issues is not a good sign. But before we do judge him on this specific issue, on this specific accusation that's been brought against him, I do think we do need the full picture. But as for what we can learn from this and take away,
a Rare Cup wants to jump in. If you say something that gets our channel banned, we'll kick you out. Do we want to send Rare Cup a link to discuss real quick?
Sure. If you know how to do that, yeah, sure. I'll just give my thoughts here while you're figuring it out.
Rare Cup, can you send I don't know how to do this, private message or something so that I can send you a link to jump on? That'd be something I can do. Let me see here. How do I do this? How do I go to Twitch here and send you a private message? Can I do this? Do I know what I'm doing? I don't know.
It's a good question. While you're figuring that out, I'll just continue making the point that I was going to make. I think what we can learn from this and how we can respond to it in our own lives, it goes to show God isn't oblivious. God isn't oblivious to what's happening on his planet Earth. God will get you, or he will allow the forces of this world to get you if you are not operating in line with his will and certainly not seeking to. So it goes to show.
I'm going to whisper to you, Rare Cup. I'll send you a link. You just got to click it and you'll jump in here.
Okay. They're still figuring out tech stuff, I guess. But don't live rebelliously to God. Don't do it. Ain't no reason to. Why? The Bible says multiple times people who live by their own accord and seek their own desires, God just lets them be. And their days end in a lot of despair. There's no reason to do so. Trouble always follows those who seek it. And if you ain't seeking God, you're seeking trouble just by default. But how can we respond? I think we can understand better that our role models aren't God. I know a lot of people do look up to Andrew Tate as a person who has gotten them out of a lot of rough stages in their life by encouraging them to, like, say, hit the gym. And the fact that they don't get girls, quote unquote, is because they are not physically in tune or pursuing their best physical self. And in turn, that affects their mental state, which in turn affects their ability to get girls. So overall, it just goes to show that our role models aren't God. Even though they may say some good things that can help us practically in life, there's no reason to see them as these infallible people who we must agree with anything on, right? They're still imperfect. They're just like us. They're broken, imperfect human beings who still need a savior. So I think ultimately that's a takeaway we can get, is that we need to seek God's truth to guide our lives. We can supplement that with sources here and there who are other people. Obviously, people can encourage, and that's a good thing, but we shouldn't put our entire trust into the thoughts and ideas of one or a few human beings, because ultimately they're just as fallible as we are. Living in accordance to God's will is ultimately what matters most. And I think that's kind of what I took away from this whole issue as a whole. Is just Andrew Tate. He's a fun guy to listen to. He's very entertaining. He says some very provocative stuff in a time where saying provocative stuff is not really accepted at all, unless you're on certain sides of the opinion. But I mean, ultimately, just chill off, just seek the truth. And you'll find that when you seek the truth, God is usually at the center of that. Ultimately, we'll go see. How's it going over there? Have you figured out how to get Rare Cup in?
Rare Cup has our whispers blocked, so Rare Cup's going to have to unblock that if Rare Cup wants to jump in and explain the Romanian.
Oh, dang it, man. Here. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're watching and you've expected to see 3 hosts, there are usually 3 hosts. Gavin was unable to join us for the first episode here, the episode about Andrew Tate, but he will be hopping on with us to discuss the Uvalde shooting that we'll be talking about in episode 3 after this episode concludes. So if you're looking for Gavin and he's not here, it's because he's not here, but he will be here in a few minutes.
Okay, good. I just sent Rare Cup a link here. You can jump on. We'll add you to the stream. We'll kick you from the stream if you say something that gets us banned, because we don't want that. Then we can't continue this fun nonsense.
Exactly. I trust Rare Cup so far. So far, Rare Cup has demonstrated a high ability to communicate sensibly.
Yes.
Let's put it.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I'm going to add you to the stream, Rare Cup. What's up, Rare Cup?
How we doing, sir?
You don't need to turn on video. You just need to turn on your mic or whatever.
Who is Rare Cup? I wonder if I know Rare Cup.
I don't know if I know Rare Cup either. It's all good.
We'll find out. The suspense is building. For anybody who's watching this or listening to this post-recorded, I feel very sorry for you because you're missing out on some fun conversation. Y'all know where to find us. Y'all know where to find us live, man. Saturdays, 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 8:30 Eastern.
Yep, we're talking in the chat. We talk with the chat. We try as best we can. It's a good time. It's a good time here.
Yes,
you hear me?
sir.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Beautiful.
There we go.
Hey.
What's up, man?
How are you
How
both?
we doing?
We're doing good.
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
He's like very vague. Can you hear him?
Yeah, I can. You want me to turn up his volume here? Give me a second.
Yes, please.
I'm going to remove automatic mic control. I'm going to increase it to 130. You want to say something here, Rare Cup?
Yeah, how's that?
That's better. It's better. I think you're still
There we
cutting
go.
out.
Yeah.
But it's
Yep, I can
better.
hear now.
Let me just see if there's anything I can do on my end.
I think you're good. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect. Sounds so much better.
Perfect. Let's change up a little bit. So, I'm not going to say anything that's going to get you banned, so you don't have to worry about that.
That's what we like to hear, man. That's what we like to hear.
No. So yeah, just to touch on obviously Romania a little bit. So the way it works in Romania is they can detain you for up to 24 hours.
Mhm.
The prosecutor can then request up to the judge to hold them for up to 180 days
Okay.
without having to give a verdict of guilty or innocent.
Mm.
So they have
Okay.
obviously been detained for 30 days. They've got an appeal tomorrow. So
Okay.
depending on how that goes, they may be out tomorrow. The judge may deny the appeal. At the end of these 30 days, either the prosecution can come forward, give their evidence and have a trial, or they can request to the judge that they be held for an extra 30 days, all the way up to a total of 180 days. After them 180 days, that's when some sort of conviction has to happen, whether it's innocent or guilty.
Interesting. So they don't have, it's not like America where you can have a long trial, right? Where I do a crime and I have to be tried within 60 days unless I waive my right to a speedy trial.
Correct, yes. So they can hold you for up to 180 days without a trial.
Okay,
Wow.
that's interesting. That's very interesting because we have a 60-day. I think we have a 24. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have a 24-hour requirement for charging, and then you at charging you have your right to post bond unless your bond is denied, and then you have to have a trial within 60 days unless you waive your right for speedy trial. As I think how that works in the States, and that's very interesting. That is he charged? Do you know, Rare Cup, or is he just still being held?
So at the moment, from what I've read from reports from Romania, he is technically still classed as a witness.
Okay, so he hasn't been charged. So when I couldn't find the
charge, from what I've read from Romanian press.
So he has been detained, effectively, not arrested, just detained.
Yeah,
He's been detained, yes.
Okay, we
if you actually look at his arrest videos, he is not handcuffed.
Interesting.
Huh. Interesting. Very.
Interesting. So yeah, we couldn't do that here in the States. We'd have to charge him within so many hours.
Yeah, same in the UK.
Yeah.
So it's 24 hours. If they don't charge you, they have to release you. On certain charges like murder, it can be up to 72 hours. And for terrorism, it can be up to 2 weeks.
Yeah. Is that UK you're saying for you?
That's in the UK, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're stuck. I think we're stuck at 24 hours here unless it's on a weekend. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, I noticed yesterday you don't like doing stuff on weekends with the with the whole voting for the House.
Yeah, no, we done.
Uh,
I watched that till what was it, like midnight or some nonsense last night? That was
Yeah, I mean, I
ridiculous.
watched it. I don't even care. I just found it so entertaining.
makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Wow, dang.
it was good. It was very good. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, those people got whatever they were negotiating for, because that's apparently what happened. Is they got some good House rules for the next term, and we can now do something similar to what you guys can do in the UK with a vote of no confidence, because Nancy Pelosi in the previous sessions got rid of the vote of no confidence. So now a single member of the majority party can say we don't have confidence in Kevin
Right.
McCarthy, and we want a vote of no confidence to get rid of him, which I think is a good thing, right?
Yeah, I was literally just about to ask that question. Is it only the party of the majority that can request a vote
Yes.
of no confidence? Right.
Correct.
Hmm.
Correct. Yes, it's
I
the
was gonna say,
party.
I could see how that could turn into a shit show if the Democrats could also do that.
Yeah, it would not be good for just moving the government forward if the
No.
opposing party can just, because Ocasio-Cortez on Monday is going to say no confidence if she could do it, right?
Yeah, you take a vote every single day.
Yeah. So that's good. Well, thank you for your input, Rick. If we get any information more about Andrew Tate and you want to discuss it, if we do another episode on him, I'd love to talk with you about it, because you seem to know what you're talking about, which is good. And I enjoyed talking with you in the chat. It was a good time.
Oh yeah,
No,
thank
I
you.
mean, I've done hours upon hours upon hours of research, both for and against Andrew Tate. I mean, I will say that I am part of the Real World, which is his course. And
Okay.
just being inside of there, the amount I've learned about how he is as a character, how his business runs, it shows how clever of a man he is. But I've also learned that the reason he became so famous so quickly was actually down to his cousin Luke. He was the driving force behind it all. And basically, I mean, it's pretty well known now that Hustlers University had an affiliate program to which they were told, make content about Tate, push it out. And they were actually told the more controversial the clip, the better. Because what they want to happen is they want arguments within the actual videos themselves. And when the arguments happen, then videos get more watch time. The algorithms will then push them videos more to more people. That's basically how the algorithm works. Is they want to push videos that are keeping people on their platform. If people are in the comments, typing on that means they're on their platform more. They're going to push that video more.
Makes sense.
And that's how we went from basically no one knew who he was to everybody anyone knew who Andrew Tate was.
Yeah, I still don't know what he is. I watched some of his videos because we're going to discuss it, because there's all the news that he got arrested last week. So I've only had a week of research. So I'll find out more as time goes on. But I really like to read the documents. Is how I like to approach things.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about reading the documents is go into it with a very open mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's what I had to take away my bias of, obviously I like Andrew Tate, I'm a fan of his, but I had to take away that bias to be able to look at it from an outside perspective, and actually analyse what the press was saying, what they were saying, and sort of come up with a conclusion of my own. And what I will say is, due to the amount of content of Andrew Tate's that I've actually consumed, I can easily point out where the press is manipulating things and twisting things.
Right.
I can also then view where the press are actually saying factual things. And I don't like the mainstream media, the fact that they're portraying everything negative about Tate, like he said this about women, he said this about women, but then they completely ignore the other side of his character, which actually portrays the complete opposite. So what you essentially got is two characters of Andrew Tate. Now, depending on which character you believe, you have to believe one or the other is lying because they contradict themselves so much. Now, what the media have done is they've said, okay, this misogynist version of Andrew Tate is the one where he's being truthful. This version of Andrew Tate is obviously lying, and that's the narrative they've run with. Whereas I think the truth is somewhere in the middle of both.
Right.
Mm.
And when I say documents, I like to read the legal documents, right?
Yeah,
The stuff written by the
yes.
attorneys on both sides. The media, I don't trust the media anymore, right? When they reported in Johnny Depp that Jason Momoa testified, and I watched that whole trial beginning to end, and Jason Momoa never testified. You know, that's real sus. You know, it's real sketch on their part, right? And they're reporting things that didn't occur because I watched every single minute of that trial for what was it, 6 weeks? It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Took a lot of my free time, right? I was watching at 2 times speed, so I didn't get the full emotional impact of some of the statements, but what they were reporting in the main media was completely bogus. So I like to read from both sides, both sources. I'd like to read from Andrew Tate's attorney when he submits a document. I don't. So here's a question I got for you, Rick.
Yep.
You seem to be more of an expert here in Romanian law than I am. Is it a system like in Korea where documents are more important in their legal system, or is it more like the United States where the spoken word is more important? In which case, we'll have to watch the trial, which we're probably not going to have access to. Or can we read the documents, or do you not know?
Okay, so I don't know, but literally just from what I've read, it seems that the prosecuting judge has decided to hold him based on his videos
Mm.
and also due to him obviously being a flight risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Things like that, rather than actual physical evidence. It seems like it's more of a public thing where it's like if we let him go, it's going to look bad in the public eye. And also, obviously, in terms of he's got massive connections, massive wealth. It's very easy for him to disappear out the country.
Mm. Interesting. So he's a flight risk, is what they're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, I can completely agree with.
Yes.
You know, with the wealth and the connections he's got, I'm sure it wouldn't be very difficult for him to disappear out of the country.
It'd be real easy. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Well, thank you, Rare Cup. I think Chris, is there anything else you want to say, or are we going to end this stream and then start the next stream to discuss another contentious topic here in like 2 minutes?
I was actually just about to say, yeah, I'm about ready to wrap up if you are. Rare Cup, any last thoughts that you want to get out to us?
No, I mean, the only other thing I'll mention is obviously I said I was part of the Real World, etc., part of his course. And I did actually join the boot camp that promotes the affiliate part of it. I'm also in another boot camp that I'm doing on there. I can't talk on Hustlers University, obviously what it was previously, because this is now completely new. I think people that are calling it a get-rich-quick scheme and a scam are very, very mistaken. What it actually is it's teaching you tools to be able to actually do things on your own. And so for this marketing, it's called a sales and marketing boot camp. And this is where the affiliate thing comes in and you pushing out videos. And the base premise of it is yes, we're helping get Andrew Tate's name out there and increasing Andrew Tate's brand. But the backside to it, what they're actually saying is we're giving you everything and all you need to focus on is sales and marketing. If you are not able to market and monetize somebody as popular as Andrew Tate, what chance have you ever got of marketing your own product? Which I think is a good thing. I mean, so with my marketing, I've gone down the route of nothing controversial. I've always sort of published videos that have a good message behind them. I don't want to be promoting this stuff like women are property and all of this because I just disagree with it. But when he turns around and he says things, you know, how to respect women, respect all men, you know, even turns around and says in one of his videos, if you're happy with having a normal life, then that's fine.
Mhm.
I'm not happy with that, but if you're happy with it, then that's fine. And this is where I don't like that the mainstream media have took one element without saying he actually has two characters. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say this character is who he is or this character is who he is, but I think the public should be given both sides of the story to make up their own mind.
I agree.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Where can we find you, Rarecap? I saw in the chat that you're going to do a documentary on this whole thing. Where can we see that when it's out?
Yeah, so I mean, it'll be posted on YouTube and Rumble.
Okay,
Because
awesome.
I don't know how long it'll stay up on YouTube.
Yep. We got to get our Rumble set up here too, Chris, at some point, so we can go
right?
live there. Yep.
Yeah. There you go.
So only
the only thing
episode
I'll say
2.
about Rumble is I like the fact you haven't got to be worried about what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah, that is
you
fair.
can say things how it is. So yeah, it will be going on both platforms. But as I say, I mean, I'm gonna follow you now. So when I do drop it, I'll drop you the link to it. That's not a problem.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll watch it and we might discuss it if that's okay with you.
Not a problem at all.
Yep. Awesome.
So what's the next segment you're going into?
We're gonna end this live stream and then we're gonna do the worst thing for our YouTube ever, which is to discuss Uvalde. And that's going to be a different live stream separate from this one, but that's what we're going to discuss, which happened because we're trying to do a 2022 recap. So we're doing a major event of 2022 each week until we think we've covered all the big ones of 2022. So
Okay,
so we're gonna discuss Uvalde. We hope to see you there in the chat in 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. I'll be there.
Our third co-host is below us here in the thing, so he's ready to jump on. So soon as we debrief with him for this episode and get ready for Uvalde, we'll start up that next stream here. It'll be pretty awesome.
No problem at all. Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Ray Cup.
No.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for contributing, sir. We appreciate it.
No problem at all, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. To YouTube, to Twitch, it's been good. We'll see you guys in 15 minutes, right? Something like that. Even though we said our stream's going to start at 7:45, it'll probably start at 8:10?
Well, yeah, I was about to say, prepare if you're watching this or intend to watch the next one. We'll probably start the next stream at around 8:10 Mountain Time, so that'd be 10:10 Eastern Time. That's probably when you can anticipate for us to kick off the second episode, or I guess episode number 3 about Uvalde.
Yep. Cool. Peace out, y'all.
Peace. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the A to G podcast. Thank you for watching it live on A to G Podcast TV. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.